Now, for the longest time in the League community, there's been this debate between people who believe that you should FF Doom games and get the hell out of the hard games, move on, go next, and other people that feel as though they don't want to FF. They feel like maybe the game is winnable or there's learnings to be had in that particular game. And so the question I'm going to be posing to the community today is, should we be learning to surrender losing games? And is this something that's important to improving or climbing in the solo queue ladder? Now, this question was actually brought up in our school community. And there was a famous French coach, I'm not going to name names, who kind of boiled down his argument, boiled down into three major points. His first point or first argument was that in order to climb the solo queue ladder, you need to be efficient with your time. And so climbing is all about time management because we only have a limited amount of time in the day. And so FFing these kind of quote unquote doomed games, you're being more efficient, you're increasing the likelihood of kind of climbing the solo queue ladder. His second argument was that FFing doesn't necessarily mean you're giving up. It's more of a strategic tool just to move on to a better quality game. And then thirdly, it helps protect your mental and stay focused on long-term improvement. So basically, he was all for FFing, get out of these hard games for these three reasons. Now, going a little bit further, I kind of feel like people fall into two crowds. And now this is a generalization, but this is kind of what I see. People that are for FFing very hard games, whereby their mindset is losing a 35-minute game is more painful than a 20-minute FF. They would rather focus on their early game and take those learnings from the early game and move on. They don't really enjoy slowly bleeding out, and they feel as though they only have minimal time, so they'll rather kind of, maximize their chances by queuing up again for an easier game. Then you've kind of got other people over here that don't want to FF because they feel as though, they feel better having made the enemy sweat for their LP and kind of make the enemy earn their LP, even if it does lead to a 35-minute loss. Some people feel as though they improve, by, dragging these games out into the mid game and kind of, they feel like there's a lot of learning to be had in these chaotic scenarios. Some people also think that they enjoy looking for those creative plays from behind. And even though they do have minimal time, they feel as though it's time well spent because, again, in those chaotic slugfests, if they can draw out the game to 30, 35 minutes, again, they not only have a lot of fun, but there's potential learning there to be had. And so the question, is I'm posing to you guys is, which side of the aisle do you find yourself resonating with? Now, to explore this a little bit further, what we're going to be doing is breaking down just a few kind of plays from one of my favorite players to watch in solo queue, which is Odysseus. Now, we're going to be watching a game this is a recent game he uploaded on one of his YouTube channels, where he was in an absolute slugfest. He was getting stomped in the early game. It was a very high elo game, and I've actually posted the OPGG of the game. As you can see, he's versing a Gurren here. Very, very high level lobby. He's playing on his second account, which is roughly sitting at 1 KLP on the EU West server. And we're going to be looking for three things: examples of opportunistic plays from behind, creative playmaking, but also kind of riffing on the chaotic nature of solo queue. Let's go ahead and take a look at a few of these clips. So this first little sequence, just to lay the groundwork, you can see that his bot lane had a very rough time. They've got an 8 and 2 Kai'Sa. His jungler's, a little bit behind as well into the Jarvan. He also didn't have the greatest early lane. The only person on his team that's doing an okay job is this Jax on top side. And so I wouldn't say the game is doomed. It's obviously unfortunate. It's not a great game state. But, I just think that what we're about to see here is just a really good classic example of just a very proactive and creative play, right? So he's playing Talia in this case, Odysseus, the Talia OTP, looks for an El Clasico shove and move. So here, even though they're at a, definitive disadvantage, they're not in the greatest spot, he makes Zoe react on the bot wave. He's able to come in from this really beautiful angle here. Him and Rakan are able to kind of pincer this Kai'Sa with a good quality placement of the R. They're able to kind of lock down this Kai'Sa and get a beautiful pick for our Ezreal, and we get a 340 gold bounty onto that Ezreal. Really, really nice play. Now, what I like about this play is that, if we were to, look at this game set, a lot of people will think, well, I lose 1v1 on the side, I lose 2v2, we lose 3v3s and 4v4s. And a lot of people will start to get discouraged. And this is where, again, leveraging our champion strengths really comes into play. We don't have to play a fair game. We can do things to create man advantages, whether it's by shoving and moving, sacking waves in the side lane, making these tempo plays, whereby, yes, we are behind, but it doesn't necessarily mean we don't have any options. It just means that our options are a little bit more limited. And what I like about this play is that we're really leveraging our champion strengths, and we're, again, looking for that, for that angle back into the game. We're not checked out. We're utilizing our lull states. We're engaging with the game and identifying, these opportunities where we can pull the trigger and make that play. So I'm actually super stoked to announce that I've just released 2 free courses inside of our school community. The first one covering how to develop your own champion pool and going into the specifics of what it takes to develop a healthy or balanced champion pool. And the second one is how to climb in solo queue, covering everything from process, reviewing, how to get into the details. And lastly, we also have free tier lists that are relevant to each patch, as well as improvement tier lists for each and every role. If you're keen, if you're looking to learn a little bit more about the game, check out our school community below where you'll find all of this free content. Now, before we get into this second little example, how many of you in this scenario would start to panic? Right, as you can see, your bot lane's getting annihilated. Your Jax is quite limited with what they can do into the Ornn. You're 1-4. You can't really deal with the Zoe. You lose 2v2 into the Jarvan Zoe. You don't really have many angles. There's not really many clear opportunities to win this game. So a lot of people here start to be like, get me the hell out of this game. I don't want to play this game. The game's over. Let's just go next. Bot lane entered. I entered. Yada, yada, yada. And, I'm not saying here Odysseus is a mental monk. I know he gets frustrated as well. But what I like about watching Odysseus is that he definitely knows how to make the enemy sweat for LP. And he makes a lot of beautiful creative plays. Now, I'm not sitting here recording this video expecting you guys all to play like Odysseus and make these great plays. But what I want to get across with this video is the mindset of looking for opportunistic plays. Something that I feel like is criminally underrated about League is that it's a very chaotic game, but that goes both ways. It's hard for us in order to play out the game cleanly and translate leads that we accrue in the early lane, but it's also difficult for the enemy to translate their leads. So if we are in a unfortunate position, and maybe we don't really know what the win condition is, we don't really know how to win the game, we're not versing T1 in the grand final, right? It's not like we're versing some crazy LCK team. We're not versing G2 with super sophisticated macro. It's solo queue after all. So the enemy are not going to be translating their leads perfectly. So my mindset a lot of time in these sorts of scenarios, similar to Odysseus, is I'm just going to keep utilizing my lull states, be hyper aware of the map state, keep my intensity up. And, maybe, just maybe, the enemy are going to be out of position at some stage. And if I put my body in the right place at the right time, and I'm aware of my teammates' locations, and I'm leveraging my champion strengths, there might be a potential opportunity. And so here he probably understands intuitively that he's got lockdown with the Vi and the Rakan. He's playing Talia, who's very, very good at locking down or following up on CC. And here in this scenario, the Vi and the Rakan are able to get onto the Kai'Sa. We're able to follow up on that beautifully. We get another beautiful pick onto the very fed Kai'Sa, and we're able to rack up a few kills. And now another element of this is that now it's not like we're versing mental monks. People make errors. So here in this case, Jarvan gets a little bit maybe flustered and frustrated, engages in a very silly way onto Odysseus. Our team is in the area. Gurren wastes ult, wastes flash, and we're able to get another beautiful pick on the back end. Now, if this is happening versus some of the greatest players on the EUS server, arguably Gurren one of the best EU solo queue junglers, then what's the bet that this is, players in your solo queue games are also going to be making these sorts of kind of silly errors? Because we're not all mental monks. We're not just, pre-programmed pieces of AI that are going to be perfectly optimizing for the next best decision every single time. We get frustrated. There's emotions, right? There's emotions involved in solo queue. We're all competitive. We're all trying to win. And when people make mistakes or things aren't going your way, you can lose that poise. You can lose that composure. And again, that goes both ways. For us, when we're behind, maybe that we get tilted and we make errors, but also on the flip side, the enemy, they're not going to translate their leads perfectly. And so I'm not saying that you guys are going to be Odysseus and be able to execute upon this, but my point is that opportunities do present themselves. And even though it may not be apparent to you in that exact moment, if you can remain poised and kind of in control of your emotions, there will be potential opportunities that, you may be able to capitalize on. Now, in this clip here, I want to kind of share a very creative play from Odysseus. And this is something that obviously, look, at the end of the day, I don't expect you guys to do this either, but I'm just kind of trying to share that there are levels to the game and that there are things that you can do very creatively from behind, like this one I'm about to show you, that can completely turn the tides of a game. So again, we're still in a pretty bad spot here. Again, I wouldn't really say that the game is doomed. Talia is quite good into their composition as well. And he knows at this point that Ezreal's behind him. And he also has his flash. So he uses his E beautifully to peel back. He's able to kind of bait in the Jarvan and the Nautilus. And then as a result, Jax is able to TP in. Ezreal's able to kind of clean up with free DPS. Jax gets the kill on the back end, and they're able to chase down the Jarvan and get that kill. So in this case, he's willing to kind of put himself in a very vulnerable position, knowing that he's got that flash. He knows his Ezreal's behind him, who is the win condition. And now he's able to trade up in kills where, yes, he dies, but they get 3 kills on the back end. So, playing from behind isn't necessarily about, winning the game in a clean way, or, making some crazy freakish play where you're randomly going to ace him. Sometimes it's about trading up in kills where it's like, I know I'm not really worth much, but if I can trade my life for multiple kills and just trade kills in general from behind, that might be able to get me back in the game. And I could speak endlessly about all the creative plays that you can make from behind. That's not the point of this video. I just want to let you know that there is more than meets the eye when it comes to playing from behind. And I think a lot of these game states where people think it's over, and just because you can't figure out how to win the game now doesn't mean there may not be opportunities in the future. Now, a common criticism of these sorts of videos and the clips that I just showed you is, Curtis, isn't this just all luck? Wasn't he just in the right place at the right time? And, didn't you just cherry pick these moments from a game? Look, at the end of the day, I'm not arguing. I'm not going to argue with that. There are elements of luck in solo queue, but my contention is that, luck is where preparation meets opportunities. One of my favorite quotes. And so if you're not utilizing your lull states, if you don't have the mindset of being like, you know what, okay, I am in a pretty desperate situation. The game is pretty screwed, and I actually, maybe to be honest, don't know how to win the game. But if I stay poised and focused, and I am utilizing my lull states, I'm calibrating the map state, I'm looking for opportunities, just maybe you might be able to, capitalize on someone being out of position. But if I'm, tilted and I'm losing my focus, I'm blaming my teammates, I'm spam pinging people and, just trying to spam FF and get the hell out of the game and AFKing a base or whatever, well, there is going to be no room for any kind of lucky play or random opportunity. I'm not even going to be able to see that opportunity in the first place, let alone seize that opportunity. And the real question, in my opinion, is, can you handle the heat? Can you handle the uncomfortable nature of being in that scenario where, you are slowly bleeding out? It does feel like shit. Maybe you're catching waves under tower. You're bleeding jungle camps. You're going to have to sacrifice a few neutral objectives. Can you handle that uncomfortable situation? And this is where I feel like for a lot of people, it's not their inability to find these opportunistic plays. It's the mentality behind seeing those opportunities in the first place. And so I want to kind of go into 3 common counter arguments to potentially not FF. I do believe that, not FFing does develop mental toughness. Like if you can get very good at being like, okay, I'm in a pretty shitty scenario. I don't know the way out, but I'm gonna stay in the fight. I'm gonna keep up my intensity. I'm gonna remain poised. I'm gonna utilize my lull states. Like I do think that does develop an element of like mental toughness. So when things don't go your way, instead of conditioning yourself to be like, oh, game's over, FF, get me the hell out of this game, I'm going to have a slightly different response where it's like, okay, yes, I am in a bad position, but what's the game state? What can I do? What tools do I have at my disposal? I'm going to be thinking, productively about how I can come back in the game rather than entering that pity party mindset where it's like, just get me the hell out of this. So I do think there is an argument to be made about developing mental toughness. I do think not FFing does allow for just punishing poor discipline and abusing of the chaotic nature of solo queue. Like a lot of people think that, if I made mistakes or my team make mistakes, like we deserve to lose the game. Like I really don't like the mentality because the reality is that League's a very hard game. And as we all know, ending games cleanly in solo queue is hard. It's very hard. Try to get your team, you send it around the next neutral objective. Try to get your team synced up on the map at the same time. How many times are you strong, but then someone gets picked in the side lane, or they pressure the map at the wrong time, or they mess up their reset, or they overstay? There's hundreds of things that can go wrong in a game that will prevent you from translating their lead properly, and all it takes sometimes is 1 or 2 bounties gone the wrong way, and instantaneously the game can flip on its head. Some people will say that, oh yeah, you're just getting lucky and praying that the enemy mess up, and that's a negative. I would argue that that's literally a part of the game of League of Legends. So I actually feel as though in solo queue that it's my duty to keep people honest and make them sweat for LP, because I feel as though ending the game is inherently a very difficult thing to do cleanly. So it's in my best interest to make it as hard as possible for you. I think that's part of the game. That is part of the skill set. I want people to kind of really work for that LP because, I know if I'm in their position, I've made many mistakes. I've thrown many games. So I kind of feel like that is just a natural part of the game itself that we need to get comfortable with. And I do think there is, skills that can be developed in these very hard games. You're going to be having to work, overtime, looking for those man advantages or those creative tempo plays. You may have to be super disciplined in your skirmishes and have a clear idea about what your job is in a particular fight. And there's obviously room for creative macros. So I don't believe in the whole idea that there is like nothing to learn from a game when you're behind. Yes, maybe there is less learnings, and maybe the key learnings are in that early game. And you may not even review the mid game, and you may center your entire post-game review on the early game and understand why you're behind in the first place. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there are skills that that can be developed intuitively throughout the mid game. Now, I want to share this other idea here where I feel like people who are quick to FF, it's because they just want to get out of this very uncomfortable kind of current reality that they're in, right? I mean, I don't blame them. You know, we all know what it feels like to be in a game where you're like, you know, it's 0 to 15, you've got no pressure, you've got no prio, you're not going to be able to win team fights, you don't know how to win the game. So you're faced with all these problems where you don't necessarily have the immediate solution. So the only solution you have to get out of this uncomfortable situation is to simply just FF, get the hell out of here. It's like the quickest way to ease the pain. And if you were to not FF, it's like you're in this incredibly uncomfortable situation. And again, ties into that idea of like, can you handle the heat? I don't really believe that, you know, people FF for these very logical reasons where it's like, I don't think we can win the game. It's just that they're kind of employing logic afterwards, or some sort of kind of logical reasoning afterwards to justify their actions. But I think in the heat of the moment in the game when they're typing FF, it's a pure system one emotional response. They're just uncomfortable, they're angry, they're frustrated. FF, get me the hell out of here. And if we can kind of train that emotional regulation and be like, okay, I am uncomfortable. This is a bit of a shitty scenario. I'm not having a ton of fun. But there is maybe a way to win this game. I think if we can train that emotional regulation, we'll see the game state for what it really is. And more often than not, again, you might realize, our comp actually does have really good pick, or we have really good lockdown, or we can actually stall out this game. It's only Cloud Soul. We can actually give the next 2 or 3 dragons. Maybe there is a way back in this game. Like, I think for a lot of people, it's not that we struggle again with identifying how to win the game. It's the emotional turmoil involved with the process of playing from behind. So look, I'm really curious. What do you guys in the community think? Like, do you think that learning to FF is a skill that we need to develop? Do you think it's something that people don't do enough? What are your thoughts on this video? How do you go about FFing in your own solo queue games? Like, I'm genuinely curious. So let me know in the comments. Don't just say, oh yeah, we should FF. Say why. Well, why do you think we should FF? And maybe, you know, what do you think about this video and some of the things that I've said? So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Otherwise, I'll see you for another video soon. Cheers, guys.